Hello, everyone. This will be the official episode one. No screw ups this time. But I wanted to start off by prefacing a few things. I want to talk about all kinds of things during this podcast. And there's not going to be any specific thing that we do. Like, we're not going to be talking about horror stories or specifically talking to people that are close to dying or anything. But I do want to constantly over maybe it'll be every 4 episodes or every month in that case that we come back to the concept of death and we just maybe brush on the topic or bring in things that we talk about and kind of see how death might cause a change of views. I've kind of been very interested in the whole concept of death for a long time. I don't know. As a little kid, you see the little Grim Reaper, and I guess not little, but you see the Grim Reaper and you go, oh man, that's so cool. It's like I was addicted to Greek mythology when I was younger, like, learning about Zeus and Poseidon and all them. And they have the personification of death in Thanatos. And, things like that are just so interesting. This concept that death isn't just a thing that happens in life. It's a being that comes to you. But before we get into the nitty gritty of talking about stuff like that, I really wanted to preface this by saying that I'm coming through these talks with a background of thinking and reading, but it is no way in the view that I'm right and some other view is wrong. If I happen to have any sort of scientific knowledge that I dive into, I will obviously source it and say, hey, this person said this. I'm not a scientist, can't prove it or whatever. But, there are things that I will talk about that occasionally will brush on that topic. But most of it will become from an anecdotal evidence, thoughts that I've had, kind of moments that I've had to reflect, conversations that I've had with people that might have shifted my views or, made me think different things. But hopefully this just brings people, as well as myself, to think about things in a bit more detail, pause our busy lives and spend more time exercising our brains in like a philosophical manner. I've been thinking about this thing for a little while, about this idea that when you break down some sort of facet in your life, you can really keep on expanding it, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Things we kind of often overlook, like maybe not overlook, but let's use the example of, hey, you have the thought that you want to lose weight. So the initial thought of losing weight is this concept that's quite huge, and you can just go, oh, I can do this thing. So we can start off by, oh, I need to exercise more to lose weight. Okay. If you haven't been going to the gym much in your life, or at least not frequently, you might have no idea where to start going to the gym. Then that comes down to the breaking down of what you want to do with the workout. So I want to lose weight, but I also want to gain muscle in this way. So you have to do these exercises, or, all kinds of different people recommend all kinds of different ways to work out different things. And they say that this is the best way to do it and blah, blah, blah. But then let's say you finally finalize what you're going to do as a workout, or something that works with you and your body type and whatever. You really like running, so you put that in your exercise routine. Great. You figured that part out. But to lose weight, a lot of it comes down to food. So now we have to think about food too. We can't just be exercise. So you have to kind of break down, do I follow the health code or whatever, where it's talks about, you need to eat this many different things from each of the food groups. and that's the healthiest way for your body to thrive? Or do you listen to all kinds of different things of, oh, let's go keto, let's go carnivore diet, or something similar, You can do those things. Or vegan, right? Those different diets that supposedly have some sort of great health benefits. So you can break it down that way, or you can continue going deeper into I need this certain vitamin and this sort of nutrient and zinc and blah, blah, blah. I need all these at 100% of my daily dosage to be perfectly healthy. So that's the idea of this concept that when you think of one thing, you have one concept, one idea, and one thing you want to do, whatever, that can be broken down into like so many layers. And I'm just kind of brushing the topic, right? You can really go deep into each one of these things. But so I kind of want to do that today with a little bit of the way that we view death, how we perceive it, how we see it as the personification of death with like Thanatos, as well as what we believe death means or what it means for our life as we live, right? Death kind of impacts, the view of death impacts how we live our life. So like one of the ways you can change your views on death is what you believe happens after you die. And consequently, this same thing has multiple perspectives. So let's bring out an idea. Let's say you are an atheist who believes that nothing happens when you die. You return to the void of empty nothingness. No way to hold any experience, and it thus will feel similar to the feeling before you were alive and conscious. This then has multiple outcomes, right? One being you could be terrified of death because it has this void, right? You're just going to enter this void. So death is terrifying. Oh, like my life might not have meaning because the death is just empty. And because of the lack of meaning, you can kind of get into this downward spiral of becoming severely nihilistic, kind of thinking that there's no point in life. There's no purpose. What's the point if everything is just going to end to a void, that I will not be able to remember any of the experiences, learn from any of the lessons. I won't continue. There's no reincarnation in this view. So that can take you down the nihilism route way down, like even going down to the point where it's like you believe in like antinatalism, which is the view that there's more pain than there is happiness in the world, meaning you shouldn't bring more life into the world. So that same kind of sense could be like the empty void that comes to all living beings is so daunting and not exciting and causes no meaning and blah, 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 that what's the point of having children and bringing life? But alternatively, the same empty void can have a more positive outcome in your views with the simple sense, that you have no memories or pain or suffering or longing for the periods before when you were alive and conscious. That part can give you almost a sense of freedom in a way that allows you to make up meaning for yourself and purpose in your life as you go through it. You can kind of look at I can do what I want and be happy with creating my purpose rather than having some outside external source deciding it for me. And obviously there is the thought that, if there's an empty nothingness, then there's no consequences. And that's kind of what people that are against atheism say, that how can you have some sort of moral views? If nothing ever happens, then why should you not hurt someone, not steal from other people and all these other things? I don't know. That's a view. But let's switch now to a spiritual view for death. This we will kind of avoid going into specific religions, singling out any sort of spiritual view. I'll try to broaden it as much as possible because my specific knowledge on religions is spotty. So let's just avoid that and just kind of break down a few spiritual views and categories and how we might view the afterlife and therefore death. The first one I kind of want to talk about is some sort of specific afterlife destination. Let's just simply make it heaven and hell. And there's multiple different kinds of orientations of heaven and hell, some even being just that there isn't a hell and there is a heaven. But let's not, like I said, make it super specific. We'll just break down different camps. Okay, so if we're believing that there is a heaven or hell, this then can break down into a couple subcategories of the way you live your life. If you believe that there is a hell and some way for you to end up there, then that creates a driving force to avoid going there, right? To avoid doing the things that would end you there and maintain your life path towards the heaven goal. This breaks into a few different camps of feelings, thinking about death as almost like a timeline where the finish line of death is where you get judged by this higher power, and it decides for you what your previous life choices would create the outcome of either going to heaven or hell, which can be a very scary thought if, you're not totally certain on the way that the higher power views your weighing, essentially. Like, this can also give a sense of urgency of getting you to do as many good things if it's a simple, I need to do more good things. But you still have that urgency of, if I die tomorrow, are my actions going to be judged positively? And should I do everything I can today? Or I think maybe you have that kind of forward thinking of death is going to come in 10, 30, 40 years or whatever. How, depending on age and health of the person that's listening. But then that can give you a kind of procrastination almost of these good things. Not that I'm advocating this, but it's just you kind of forego the thought of maintaining a perfectly good life in this weighted scale so that you can get to heaven, because you have some time to get there, essentially. So that's one of the views. Let's switch here, because I'm just going to do some broad strokes on each one of these. Because like I said, my specific religious knowledge is quite spotty, so let's just brush through these basic concepts. And this is going back to that same idea of how, if you wanted to, you could go into so much detail. Because the heaven and hell can be broken down in many different religions in many different ways. There's not just one way of hell and one way of heaven. Let's switch now to the spiritual view of death leading to a reincarnation. The reincarnation concept is that when you die, you reincarnate into something. Now, there are many potential options, all with their deep complications and ramifications of like turning into a dog or something. But let's just assume that you reincarnate into a person. So this reincarnation could work on a karmic system. If you are good in life, then you will be rewarded with a life of happiness in a later life. Or it could work completely random, or it could work in the same kind of way that a heaven and hell kind of would be judged by a higher power. It can also work in a higher power decides what life you will live once you die. And I mean, I'm not going to assume what a higher powers reasons might be for you to reincarnate into this body or whatever instead of another. So all of these concepts can be broken down so far that you can really just spend almost, and people do probably spend entire lifetimes just kind of on this specific view of death and what happens afterwards. And these views and beliefs and feelings towards death can impact our lives in a positive or negative manner. Even if we don't think about death very often, the back of our mind belief in it makes us change our actions and decisions throughout our life. And that's kind of what I wanted to do today, just kind of make us all pause and think about our views around death in this way and how it influences our actions. I had a conversation with my coworker not too long ago where I was kind of disappointed in myself about how you kind of, when you don't do this kind of pause meditation almost on this type of thing, you, at least for me, this is me talking to my coworker. For me, I had this sense that I am the protagonist of my story, right? All my actions and things come out of my view. I'm looking out of this body, and I therefore am the main character of my own life. And therefore, when you're like watching stories and movies and stuff, the protagonist has this plot armor. So you kind of fall into, or at least I fell into this view that I have some sort of plot armor and I'm not going to die. I'm the protagonist. The protagonist's plot armor is only going to allow him to die when the story makes sense. And my death, if I died tomorrow, wouldn't make sense. There's no finality. There's no completion of the story. So then I'm not going to. And this kind of complacency thought of me just foregoing the idea that I could die tomorrow made me annoyed at myself, because I could die tomorrow. And I'm not hoping for it, obviously. I really want to live to the point of 90 or plus. But I do want to have the acceptance of a death that comes suddenly. And that's additionally, just a side note, is an additional reason for this podcast, is I really want to just kind of have a bunch of thoughts and have people in my family to be able to listen to my voice and know what I was thinking on today being October 15th, 2023. So my family can go back and listen to my voice and be like, oh, this is what Shay was doing, my name, before he died, kind of. But yeah, this protagonist thing really messed with me. It frustrated me because you can't avoid that complacency unless you do something like this or really break down and do a meditation type exercise regularly, where you constantly are reabsorbing the acceptance feeling. Otherwise, you're just going to go back into that protagonist view of plot armor. And it's unavoidable, I think, at least for myself. I don't know if I'll ever not fall into that camp of, oh yeah, I'm getting into my car. Sure, I could get into a car accident, but I'm not going to believe that I will. And I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to just get in my car like I've done 1,000+ times and drive to wherever I need to go to get my coffee or to go to work, and just avoid or not think about the potential life-changing decision that might occur. You know, my car might break down and that might change my entire day. Not too long ago, my car's battery died and I had to boost it, right? Luckily, I was at that time surrounded by electricians, so it was an easy fix. But it's like that kind of thing could happen at any moment. Not, I would assume, while you're driving, of course, but, you know, things like that can completely change how you move about. I once had there was a long time ago, 6 years ago or more, I was working as a roofer, and I was driving to work in the morning, or about to drive to work in the morning. I got into my car, and my car wouldn't start. This is the first time my car ever had this, like years of driving it or whatever. It never had trouble starting. It wasn't super cold out. It was during the summer, so we were great. But it wouldn't start. Eventually it did, but it took me like 15 minutes, letting it pause and wait and not trying to flood my engine or whatever. I'm not a car guy, so I have no idea what happens if you hold the ignition or whatever, but that's just what people say, so I'm going to repeat it. And then once I got my car started, I started driving to work. Before that, I texted my boss saying I'm probably going to be late because my car wouldn't start, right? I get in my car and I start driving to work, and then all of a sudden a train is in front of me. And it's like, okay, I wait for this train. And I can't remember exactly because it was, like I said, 6 or something years ago, but there was, I think, one more instance of something delaying me before I got to work. And I couldn't help but shake the thought. It was like, it's like the universe is telling me that I shouldn't go to work, And maybe that's just my, hey, I hate roofing, so I don't want to do it. But I had this concept that maybe the universe is telling me that I shouldn't go to work. And then the thought broke down and was like me going, well, if the universe is telling me not to go to work, what am I going to experience today at work that the universe doesn't want me to have, right? So maybe some accident's going to happen or something. And so the entire day eventually got to the shop, went to work, and the entire day while I was working, just constantly thinking about this. And of course, something did happen. Nothing super major, dangerous or major, but there was this small cloud. It was a super sunny day. There was a small cloud that came by, and it just dumped rain all over us. Just crazy amount of rain. Every single one of the roofers that day was just sprinting and tarping off as much as we can to make it as watertight as we could in the short time that we had to prepare. Because like I said, clear sky, one cloud that was off in the distance, and then when it came up to us, it was pouring. It wasn't even a dark cloud or anything crazy. Sun shower. And the worst thing that happened through that was just me getting a bloody nose. So nothing to worry about. But I couldn't help but laugh and smile and be happy because it was like, oh, I was so worried about what might happen today. And if this is the worst thing, I kind of just attributed it to being the thing that it wasn't supposed to happen. Not that I believed directly that there was a driving force to prevent me from going to work, but I attributed that rain to being the, oh, don't go to work day feeling. And it was, I don't know, it was elating because it was like, oh, I don't need to worry. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to watch someone die. So we're fine. And yeah. But so this concept of me being a protagonist only has broken, I've only broken that concept, broken that train of thought, kind of mindless autopilot mode only a few times. And I want to do that a few more times, more regularly. I kind of really hate that complacent view of me being a protagonist and having that plot armor, because none of us have plot armor. We are just as squishy as the next guy. And, I've seen a few videos of horrible accidents, and that kind of thing could very easily happen to me. So I need to keep this mentality, I think, because I benefit from it in the sense of I'm not going to get depressed and worried and like not go out and drive and whatever. But I just want this concept to keep me grounded and not kind of keep my head away from the stars of, oh, that plot armor, right? I think I've hammered in that point enough. The only other thing I really wanted to discuss is there's this concept for a tattoo. I've got quite a few tattoos, full tattoo sleeve. There's a concept for a tattoo that I've been throwing around in my head that I've always really wanted, and it revolves around a view around a personification of death that I once read. Like, I had to really look it up. It's a no sleep short story. Reddit has this subreddit called No Sleep. It's usually little horror short stories written by just random people, I think. And I read it years and years ago, and it kind of stuck with me. I'll link it in the descriptions of this podcast. But the title of it is Don't Fear the Reaper. And it's about this guy who has a horrible upbringing. His dad was an alcoholic and would abuse him and beat him and whatever. And throughout a couple of the beatings that his dad would give him, he would witness death off in the corner. It was a shadowy figure. I think that he put him in the fetal position. But he had this conversation with death. And he's like, "Why are you here?" And death says, "To watch over you." And the kid at the time is like, "Why don't you intervene? Why don't you stop my dad from beating me?" And death just says, "It's not my place." But it's a short story, so it kind of skips through time. And at the end of the short story, the main character is old and on his deathbed, had married and had kids and grandkids, and lived a full life, essentially. And he is on his deathbed, and he looks off into the window, and he sees death. And I think it's holding his wife's hand, because I think his wife dies before him. But he still looks off in death, and death tells him, "Now is finally your time." But this concept, I attributed it to the idea that death is like a somber, motherly figure that is a transition, a soul's transition to the afterlife, whatever that be. It's this kind of idea that death isn't this horrible skeleton in a black robe with a scythe and he just comes and just reaps souls. It's this concept of death as being this kind of like Charon from Greek mythology, the guy who transports people across the river Styx towards, from purgatory, I think, to hell. A little rusty on those details, but still is the ferry to another destination. So you think of death as this kind of ferry, this person or being specifically, that takes your soul and brings it to some otherworldly place. And I loved that idea. I read that years ago, and I was like, man, that's such a cool concept. I really hated the death of, I mean, I as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I definitely found it cool to see a skeleton in a robe with a big scythe, but I didn't like the evil kind of idea of it. I liked it as more of this motherly figure, someone who's caring, who can't intervene in the horrible things that go on in your life. You're meant to kind of experience those things, but death will be there to help you find your way once the transition to death is upon you. And that's been my favorite personification of death, and it's a tattoo that I've wanted to put on my body, but I really need some artist to properly convey that idea. And that's always my hard part with tattoos, is finding the artist. But yeah, so that's the personification of death. That's my favorite. There's obviously many different personifications, especially in mythologies and stuff, like, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, all those have their death-like figure, and they all have their different kind of outlooks and views and blah, blah, blah. Like even DC Universe has their own death, which is just a female Eternal, I believe is what she's called. And she's kind of in this vein of this motherly figure, very helpful, and just kind of surprises people when she shows up. But yeah, so all in all, these views, these thoughts around death kind of focus around the afterlife. Where we go after we die changes how we view today and how we live our lives and make decisions. And a lot of these kind of are unconscious and in the background of our views. And I really wanted today to just bring that out and focus on putting it into the forefront of our thoughts and use that to kind of keep us grounded, keep me grounded, like I said, and know that my decisions are influenced by my views after death, but I can't always focus on the death and then therefore be like, if I'm going to get ice cream, if I go to the ice cream store and I go, man, I might die tomorrow, so I'm going to eat like 2 liters, or vice versa, eating that 2 liters might cause me to die tomorrow, so let's not eat that ice cream. I'm not going to do that through my life, but I just wanted to break it down. Think about it. Yeah, I think that's a good way to end this podcast today, is just kind of roughly going over a bunch of different things and different stories, and just this concept that I worried about and I need to ground myself. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody.